Thank you. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? I know that you've recently been introduced to Index Match. So, how are you feeling about Index Match before we get started? Oh gosh, and I see -14 weather in Canada. So, yes, that is a little too cold. Still getting used to it. It takes some time. We are going to do a little bit more with index match, but just at the start. Great. Not confident. If you're not confident, no worries. We are going to practice. Amazing. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to share my screen. This is one of the data sets that I think I love the most personally as a gamer, and it's all about esports. So we're going to be investigating how much esports teams make, which is actually a lot of money, and I think it's just increasing, especially with Marvel Rivals. So we are going to explore. So again, if you do not have that Excel sheet that is in resources, so if you go ahead and navigate to resources, then you will have it. But we're going to introduce ourselves to it in a moment, but let's just see what we're going over today. So, as you also saw before, data that we're presented with is not always going to be clean. So, sometimes we have to extract the information that we need from our data. And to do this, it's important that we're really comfortable with these text functions. So, functions that have to do with text, either concatenating text, so squishing text together, or taking bits and pieces from text, either at the start or beginning of a phrase. And we also have some other things. We're also going to do a little bit with our conditionals, so our if statements. So all of this is really good, especially for data cleaning. I use this all the time when I have really messy sequencing data, or if I have to just take out some weird kind of like Python output. If I need to clean the information, this is a great way to do it. All right. So just make sure I'm sharing the right thing. Yes. So what we're going to do is we are going to dive into this esports sheet. So what I can do is I'll just go ahead and forward that again to live chat. So we're working with this today. And let's just go ahead and look through it. Let's understand our data first before we actually dive in and do a little bit of work. So for me, I'm going to be working in Excel Online as usual. But if you want to work on your desktop version, that's completely okay. But if you're working on Excel Online with me, just a reminder, after you've downloaded this worksheet that we just put in live chat and in resources, you're going to go ahead and go to File. Then you're going to go to Open. And then once you're in Open, you'll see you're going to click here where it says Open Files from this device. And then once you do that, you'll see all of your downloads. And if you've just downloaded it, it'll be at the very top. So you'll just go ahead and click that and click Open. I'm not going to click Open just because we already have this file here. So with that, let's explore our data. So you see we have these different sheets. And let me get my annotate. So we have our highest earning players worksheet, and in that is going to be player ID. We have name. Let's expand these a bit so we can see them. We have our first name. We have last name. We have their current handle. So that's going to be like their gamer tag. We have their country code, which we'll explore a little bit later. And we have their earnings. So this is a lot of money that they're earning from esports. Esports is very lucrative. And we also have the game and game genre. So here you're going to have the name of the game, and then afterwards we have the genre of the game. So that's just what's in our highest earning players. If we look in our highest earning teams, we zoom in a bit so we can see it. Again, we're going to see this team ID. So kind of an alarm bell should go in your head when you see these IDs. IDs are usually good for connecting information. And Marie's saying should have gamed more instead of studying at school. I know, I was like, I'm a gamer and maybe I should have focused a little bit more on games, but no, it's great learning these techniques. So we have our team name. So we have our different team names for the esports teams. We have their total as a team US prize money, or US dollar prize money, how many tournaments they've been in, the game, and then the game genre again. So some of the some of the information is going to kind of connect or overlap, and that's going to be important for picking and choosing and kind of index and matching some data. Then we also have some country codes. So notice we don't have any information about our teams or our players explicitly, but we do have continent, we have a continent code, we have a country name. Let me expand it so we see all of that. We have a 2-letter country code, and we also have a 3-letter country code, as well as a country number. So just expanding these so you can see them. So it's good to understand our data a little bit before we dive right in. And this formula sheet, this is going to be for practice for our text functions. So we aren't going to worry about this right now, but we'll come back to it. All right, so now that we've gone through our data, we need to prepare our data for our colleague and give them an idea of interesting insights that they'll be able to obtain from it. So essentially, how lucrative is esports and should we quit and just all go to esports? No, just kidding. But we do want to understand our teams a little bit more, as well as our players and their earnings. Okay. See a lot of CSGO fans. I think for me, it would be either League or Naraka Bladepoint personally. Okay, so our data, as I mentioned before, it's not always going to be numbers. We're going to have a lot of text data, and it's important to extract information from this text data as well. So this is just another overview of what we went over. We have our different worksheets, and we already explored our data, so we are in good shape. So let's continue with our first exercise. It's back. It is back to haunt you. We're going to first do this with index match. So if you look at, or let's first look at this highest earning player sheet. So you see that in our highest earning player sheet, I'm going to go here. We have this information here, and you are going to need to fill in a bit of information over here. So let's just see what this exercise wants us to do. No, it's okay. I promise. Index match is going to be your best friend in a couple of weeks. Codio, just refresh. Okay. Codio's like, Codio doesn't like index match either. It's just a strike against index match. Okay, there we go. So we are going to use index match to fill out the country name and continent name columns. So we're going to fill out the country name and continent name columns in the highest earning players sheet. So I think I accidentally deleted them, but you're going to fill in, this should be country name, and then this will be continent name, if I spelled that correctly. Yes. So you're going to use index match and make sure to really try with index match. I know VLOOKUP tends to be a favorite more than index match, but really try with index match, really practice. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do exercise 1. So again, you're going to use index match to fill in the country name as well as continent name for the highest earning players sheet. So I'm going to give you a few minutes, probably like 3 minutes. So I think I actually didn't share my sound. So let me, really helpful is, like I mentioned before, understanding, okay, what data are we connecting together? So we know that we're going to first need this country name. If we look through our data, we know it can't be in this first sheet or else we wouldn't have to do an index match. If we look at our highest earning teams, do you see anything related to country here or like country code or country name in this sheet? See typing. No, exactly. We don't see anything, so it's not going to be this one. So this is not going to be the sheet that we're working with. Okay, what about, well, actually, by process of elimination, that's going to lead us with country codes because this aux formulas, that's not going to be for connecting this data. So we know based on that, it has to be in this country codes sheet. So the second thing that you have to find out is how can I connect this data? Now let's go back to our highest earning players and let's look at all the columns again. So we have a player ID. IDs are generally good for connecting data, so we'll kind of put that in the back of our mind. Names are not good at connecting data because you can have duplicates of names. Names are not unique to an individual, so it's not a good way to connect information. Handles are unique, but I don't think we saw any handles in our country code. Country code is looking the most promising because we see country code here is most likely a code to either the full country name or information about the country. And also this is called country codes. So we're going to go with country codes and see if country code exists in this sheet. So then if we go through our data, now we're in country codes here. If we go through our data, we have continent name, continent code, country name, and we have this 2-letter country code. So we know that we're going to match this 2-letter country code with the country code in our highest earning players sheet. That's going to be the thing that we connect together. So I like to do that as a first step. And it's going to be very helpful later when we go into SQL, kind of thinking this way. So now let's start with our index match formula. So we always start with equals. We're going to begin with index. And remember, index is saying, this first part is saying, what data do you want me to search through? What data do you want me to search through and eventually pick out your answer or whatever you're looking for? So what is this first part going to be? What am I going to have for this first part of index? If I'm looking for all of the data that I need to search through to find my answer. What's that going to be? See some typing. So yes, it's going to be this full country code table. Column E is a good guess. We are going to need column E for later on, but this first part of index is asking what is the entire data set that I can find my connecting column as well as the column you want to return. So this is going to be a big array. It's not going to be one column, it's going to be a bigger array. All right. So now, before we go further than that, does that make sense why it has to be an array rather than one column? Is that okay? Because I know index match has many, many steps. I see no. Okay. Okay, yeah, let's go over that. So, and thank you for responding honestly. That's really helpful. So let's go with our formula first, and I'll explain it. So index first is going to ask for an array. It needs an array because we have to highlight all of this information here. Because in index, we have to first take the information that we want to return. So we need to find our answer. And we also need to indicate what is the column that you need to connect. So we actually don't have to connect all of the data. It doesn't have to be this entire data set. We could actually really just return or index this 2-letter country code, as well as the country name. Because again, what we want to return is going to be the country name. And how are we going to match it? We're going to match it with the 2-letter country code. So at minimum, it can just be C and D together. That's the minimum we can do. But it's good practice to just use the entire data set just in case you want more information later. And index match functions are really, really good to reuse. So again, just to recap, the minimum that we can use is this for our index because what we are looking for is this country name, and we're going to find it through this 2-letter country code. So again, this is our connector in column D and what we're looking for in column C. So is that okay now? Hopefully that helps a little bit. Yes. Awesome. Okay, great. I'm happy to hear that. It takes some time though. You need a lot of practice with index match, but you will get a lot of practice with index match, so do not worry. So again, we could just do C and D, but I prefer to just highlight everything because we're going to need to use this later on. So we're going to use this later. So now that we have this, we are going to begin our match. So yeah, so I see a Y highlighting everything. So I like to just highlight everything just because, let's say I want to use or I want to return continent name instead of country name. If I want to do that, then I would have to create an entirely new index match formula. Instead, if I highlight all of the data in my first index, I can return anything within this data set. So anything is fair game, rather than just columns C and D. That's a great question. And then, yeah, an array is just kind of a group of things. So an array is just many columns, or an array could just be a section. This could also be an array. So it's a group of cells, essentially. That's what an array is. That's a great question. Okay, and then another great question. So Pablo's asking, will the size of the table slow down the fetch? Not until you get to hundreds of thousands of rows, it shouldn't, or maybe millions. I think millions and a lot of data it's searching through, it might slow it down. But right now, we're okay. That's a great question. Okay, amazing. So now let's just start from scratch. We know that we need to search through this country code formula to find all of our information. Now begins match. So remember, match is going to it's going to take a lookup value. It's going to take your lookup value and look for it in your array. And then it's going to give you, well, match is not going to give you a result, but the full function will give you a result. So let's think of this again. Or let's do this once more with feeling. So you see match is first asking for our lookup value. Given what we know before, or given now we know how we're going to connect the columns together, what is going to be our lookup value? Where is that going to be? See a few answers. So this is tricky. Lookup value is a little tricky, but lookup value is going to be one cell. So your lookup value is going to refer to one cell. So the fact that it needs to be one cell, this is generally the only time you're going to go back to where you created your index match. So again, your lookup value is usually the one time you're going to go back and reference something in the sheet that you are creating your index match from. So knowing that it's going, yeah, amazing. So knowing it's going to be in this sheet, we see that we have our player name, we have our names, our handle, and we have country code that's hiding under this. So country code is going to be how we connect the information. So since we're starting at the very top, we're starting with row 2, we have to use E2 to connect our information. E2 is going to be our lookup value because we're going to take DK and we're going to match it to our country codes in the country sheet or in the country code sheet. And then we're going to return country name. That's what we're trying to do. Now we have our lookup array. And this time the lookup array is just going to be one column. So your lookup array is just going to be a column. So what is the lookup array going to be? The lookup array is going to have to somehow match DK or match cell E2 to be able to get the answer we need. How do we do that? The typing, I see a couple answers. Yes, exactly. Well done. So we're going to go back to our country codes sheet, and it has to be this 2-letter country code because in this column, this is the only place where our DK country code appears. So when you're looking for your lookup array, you have to try to find, okay, which column is going to contain my lookup value? That's what you should think. So the only column that contains our lookup value is going to be column D. Is that okay for match so far? Awesome. See a no. If no, then if there's anything else I can repeat, I'm happy to. So I'll just do a quick recap. Oh, Sam's asking a good question. It doesn't matter whether they're capital compared to lowercase. It does not. It's not case sensitive. Great question. And I see another great question. Why can't we use column E? So we can't use column E because this is a 3-letter country code. We're not going to find DK, which is our lookup value, anywhere in column E. So that's why we can't use it. If instead our lookup value was, for example, AFG, then we would have to use column E. Awesome. So again, our lookup value is going to be the original sheet where we want to put our information. It's going to be, what are we going to match? Which value do we need to match with our connecting worksheet? So in that case, that's going to be country code, which was in E2 in our highest earning players sheet. We're connecting that with column D because it has our 2-letter country code. And then afterwards, this is generally going to be 0. This is because we want an exact match. I can't really think of a good scenario where you would want an approximate match. So 0 is going to represent exact match. I would say like 95% of the time, it's going to be an exact match. Even for time is going to be probably not a good way to use approximate match. I think it's better to use an if statement or conditionals for that. So I would recommend most of the time it's going to be 0 for exact match. You could also do, I think 0 is easier because you have less to type. So are we done now? Are we done with this or do we have another step? This is a part that's very confusing once you're learning index match. Are we done or is there something else to do? Yes, we're not done yet. So yeah, and actually Akeem brings up a good point. We also are going to have to fix our references. But we are not done with our index. So this is only to figure out this row number. We have to figure out what column do we want to return. So exactly, we're not yet done with index. To figure out what column we want to return, this part I think it's not quite straightforward, but I'd say if you know it, it's straightforward. We have to find the column index. And to find the column index, a good way is just counting the columns. So A is going to be column 1, B is column 2, 3 is column C, 4 is column D, and so on and so forth. So, based upon the fact that we want to return country name, since we want to return country name, what number is going to be our column index? And amazing, I already see it. Well done. And then I see another good question. Can you use index without match? Yes, so index and match are separate formulas. You can use them, but they're often used together just for the power that they have. But you can use either formula separately. So now we're going to use column index 3. And then let's just go through this again before we kind of clean up what else we need to do. So first, we are going to have let's bring this back. First, we have our array. This first part of index match, and I'm going to type this in live chat as well, so you have kind of a reference. Our first part is going to be, where is the information I'm searching through? So where is the data that I can find my answer as well as my lookup value? So where is the data that I can find my answer and my lookup value? And this is going to be a big array of data, or not big, but it's going to be an array of data. So this is what I like to say is, where am I searching? That's going to be your first part of index match. Then begins your match statement. Match is first going to ask, okay, where is your lookup value? Your lookup value is going to be what single value are you going to use to connect your information to your reference sheet? What are you going to do to connect to your reference sheet? So which value, and remember this is a single value, which single value connects my data? Then afterwards, and I'll click it here. So this is lookup value. Then it's going to be lookup array. And I think a really good shortcut for this is in my index or in my index array. So this has to be in here. So the column that you choose for your lookup array has to be within your index. That's very important. So for this one, for your lookup array, which column contains my lookup value? So which column in my index array contains my lookup value? Then after that, we want exact match. So this means we want our identification or identifier or our lookup value to be exactly the same as the one you find in the column. So you don't want it to be approximate. You want these matching values to be exactly the same. So that's what this 0 means. Then a big reminder, after you finish match, you are not done yet. You have to choose your column index. So this is saying, what is the column number of the column you want to return? So essentially, what is the column number where you find your answer? And you just count the top of the columns. So if I move this out of the way, 1 is the first, 2 is the second, 3, 4, oops, sorry, yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. I was like, wait a second, this is not right. Okay. So 1, 2, 3 for country name. That's the third. So that's why it's going to be 3, because we are returning the country name, and that's the third column. So that's why we have 3 here. So which column number is my answer in? That's your final. I'm just going to post this in the live chat for you as a little shortcut. And okay. However, we are not quite done yet. So as we learned before, if we just autofill this, Excel is dynamic. Excel is thinking, oh, hey, I'm going to move your cells and move your columns as you move down because I'm trying to be helpful. That's great, but we need to fix the things that don't change. So let's just go through and see which data stays the same and which data is going to change. So we have our index array here. Is our index array going to be the same every time, or is it going to change? Exactly. This is going to be the same. Exactly. Because this is our array. This is what we're referring to, this country codes. It's not going anywhere. It's going to always stay within this range. So this we can fix. Excellent. And remember the shortcut for fixing this, we can hit F4 if you're on Windows, or you can kind of get used to these dollar signs as well. And I saw a question, is the number of the column in the lookup array right? So if we were to search through C and D columns, yes, okay, great question. So yes, so like I mentioned before, I just like to take the entire worksheet just so it's easier to search for other information before. But like you mentioned, if you change this to just C and D, your column index changes as well, which is a great point. So if you change this to just C and D, so what I mean by if I just change my lookup array as just these two, your first column begins on the first column of only your array. So then it would be 1. Exactly. So it would be 1. So that's a great point. Okay. I've lost Slack. Okay, I'm trying to update Slack so I can see everyone. Okay, there we go. All right, so now let's keep going through. So we've locked this one. Now let's just move to next to the right. So we have our lookup value here. Is our lookup value going to change? Is our lookup value going to be dynamic, or do we need to fix this? Amazing. Yes, this is going to change. Well done. This is going to change because remember when we're autofilling the formula, we're doing the formula for every single row. So the first formula is for the first, the second formula for the second, the third for the third. So we're calculating this information for each individual. So the country code is changing every time, or not every time, but it's not consistent as we move down in a row. So this has to stay dynamic. So do not fix your lookup value. Generally, you do not need to fix your lookup value because it's likely going to change over time. Excellent. Then you have your, and this is going to be our lookup array. So is our lookup array going to change or is it going to stay the same? Amazing. Yes, this is going to stay the same. So if it's a little bit confusing, so our lookup array here is country codes DD. So that just means the entire D column. This is always going to be the same. Our two-letter country code is always going to live in column D. So we want this to stay the same because our reference is staying the same. So this should always be fixed as well. So we have to fix this. Excellent. And then your column index, you don't need to do anything to. That's not going to change. So then we have our mega formula as this. Before we move on, any questions about this? So great question or a great point from Patrick. So you can partially fix the lookup value if you want to reuse the formula. You can't do F2 for this because if you fix the entire cell, it's going to stay on cell E2. However, we know that the lookup value is always going to live in column E. So remember, if we have a $sign in front of the E, that means we're staying in column E. If we have a $sign in front of the 2, that means we're staying in row 2. So, like Patrick is mentioning, if you want to copy and paste and reuse this formula, you can go ahead and put a $sign in front of the E. And that just means our lookup value always lives in column E. So don't formula moves, even if we copy and paste it somewhere else, one cell over, don't change it. So you can also do that as well. Okay. So yes, this, you don't have to have this. This will still work without the $signs. If you're doing this the way that I am, Excel's pretty smart. And a lot of the times when you're selecting your columns, it's not really going to change them all the time. It depends on your Excel version. So most of the time it's not going to change this, but it's still good practice to make sure to fix your columns. However, if you are going to select things like this, so if you're selecting A2 to B38, Excel is definitely going to change that. So that especially you need to fix your references. But I still think it's overall good practice to fix the references that don't change. Okay, then we double click and then we have it here. So we can reuse this formula. So that's another big reason why I like to select all of my data instead of just two columns, because it allows you to reuse your formula quickly. So now we have created our country name, but we also have to create our continent name. How can I edit this index match formula to, instead of finding my country name, I need to find the continent name? What do I need to change for that to happen? Amazing. On fire. Yes, we have to change our column index. So if we look at our country code sheet, right now we're referring to column 3. 1, 2, 3. We're taking this country name. If instead we want the continent name, then we change this to column 1. So if I copy this and I paste it, and I change this 3 to a 1, now instead I get my continent name. And we can autofill as well. Well done. Okay, so before we move on from this, are we okay? I know we're not super comfortable, or not all of us are super comfortable with index match, but with more practice, and again, you're going to have more practice, it comes in time. But if there's anything else I can kind of go over again, then I'm happy to. Yeah, the last one again, absolutely. So for this, everything is going to stay the same. So our continent name, we are still obtaining the information from this country code. So using the country code, we can still get the continent name. So that means our lookup value stays the same, our lookup array stays the same, and our column is going to stay the same. This column in match, this lookup array, is also going to stay the same. All the information is staying the same. Again, just one more time. So array is going to stay the same. This is the information we're looking through. That's the same. Lookup value stays the same because we need to know this country code to find this information. And then lookup array is going to stay the same because the country codes live in column D. So the only thing that changes is which column we're returning. Which column do we actually want to get back from this function? Before, we picked column 1, 2, 3 because we were looking for this country name. But since we're changing it to the continent name, we want column 1 because this is just number 1. It's the first column. Okay, awesome. Okay, and then if you see some differences with kind of brackets, sometimes the Excel Online version or different Excel versions, they're going to use these names directly in like brackets. So that's okay if it's working. That's totally fine. Okay. So now that we've done this, let's go on to our text functions. So I think working with the text functions is a little bit easier. So let's first just look at them in Excel. So when you have Excel Online or even Excel Desktop, it's going to allow you to get some information about your functions. So for example, you see write is going to return the end string of a character. So it's going to return the rightmost string, or it's going to count from the right, and then it's going to return whatever you specify. Then for left, it's going to do the same thing, but opposite. It's going to count from the leftmost part of a string and then return whatever you specify again. And then we have another one, we have mid. So I see a few questions. I'll answer those in a moment right after this. For mid's a little bit different. Mid is going to allow you to pick where you want to start and then count the number of characters that you want to include. So these all we're going to go over in more detail, but it's just good to get comfortable with our text functions. So jumping a little bit back to our index match. So I see if only using C and D. So if you're only using C and D, that's not going to work. So that's why I like to highlight everything. If you're using C and D and trying to obtain the continent name, that won't work because it's not included in your index. So you'll have to expand your lookup array to include that as well. And then the Y, the $ in E2. So for that one, we have this because we're telling Excel, hey, Excel, don't move from column E for my lookup value. My lookup value is always in column E. If we don't do this, I'll just show you what happens. It's not going to change anything, except if I copy and paste this somewhere else, you see this is going to change to G2. So by having that $sign or fixing the column that we're looking at, it's easier to kind of copy and paste and manipulate our formulas. So that's why we do it. Okay, great questions. So now let's do some fun with our text. So we're going to get the first letter for all players' first names and place them in the first initial column in the highest earning player's sheet. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is supposed to be first initial, but I accidentally deleted it. So this is first initial. So to do this, you see that we have our first name in our worksheet. So we have the first name here. If we want the first initial, we just have to take the very first character of the name. And Patrick's already on it. Yes, well done. We just have to take the very first character of the name. So that means it's probably easiest to start from the left, because the left, you're going to start counting from P. If I were to use right, I would start counting from R. So we're going to use left so we can start counting from P. And then let's just go over this. Zoom, so you can really see this formula. So we begin with left, and you see it's first asking for text. So your text, it can be any text if you want to type it, but I think this is most useful if you actually are specifying a cell. So, sorry for this mega zoom. So I'm going to click this because my first name lives here, and I'm trying to get the first initial. So this is where the text lives. And now it's going to ask me, okay, how many characters do you want to include? Starting from the left. So we're counting from the left, and Excel is saying, how many characters do we want to include? So since we just want the first initial, what is this number going to be? Exactly. It's 1, since we just want that first initial. If we wanted the first 2, it would be 2. If we wanted the first 3, it would be 3. But we just want the initial, so it is 1. And now we have that first initial. Great question. Does this formula include spaces? Yes. Spaces count as characters. So if you have words, you have to treat your spaces as a character. Great question. Now we can autofill this because this needs to change because the names are changing. Every time we move down a cell, the name changes. This 1 is not going to be affected. It's always going to take just that first character. So we can double click this box here and we can autofill for our first initial. If you input a number longer than the text, I am a scientist, so I like to trial by fire. So let's see. If I click Peter, and then I say 17, it's probably just going to give you a lot of spaces. So it's okay with this since it's counting from the left, but it's just going to include everything, but you might have some hidden spaces here. But, okay. So if it's giving you the last letter, you might be using right. So make sure you're using left here. Okay, and so this isn't looking for any characters. It's just asking how many characters do you want to include? So it's not going to do anything other than that. It's not going to search through them. Characters can still be the same. That's fine. But it's just going to do this. Okay, awesome. So now with that, let's go ahead and do our, whoops. You didn't see it. You saw nothing. Let's do exercise 2. I forgot that happened when I refreshed Codio. We're going to do the exact same for left initial. So take a couple or take 1 minute, we'll say, and try to figure out how do we do the same thing for last initial. So we're looking for last initial here. And in the meantime, I can see if there are some questions that I'm able to answer. And then Lord, you're asking if would it be better to make a table? So you don't have to make a table. You don't have to. Using the references is totally fine too, but that's a preference. That's up to you. And okay. And then for index match, so when do you use index match? I say all the time, I like index match better than VLOOKUP. But if your ID or the thing that you need to connect, if your ID is not in the first column, you have to use index match. Okay. Amazing. I'm seeing everything in live chat. So yes, this time it's the last initial. So the first letter of the last name. Well done. So this time, what we're going to do, since we're calculating the last initial, is we're still going to use left. So we're still using left, but now we're just selecting a new cell. So since we want the first letter of the last name, instead of selecting B2, I'm going to select C2. And then it's asking me, which character do you want? I only want the first character. Or how many characters do you want? I only want the first character. So it's going to be this. And then afterwards, we can autofill down. All right. So again, before we move forward, any questions on anything we've done thus far? All good? Nope. Oh yeah, so for autofill, you're just gonna double click on this box. Sometimes Excel Online doesn't like to work with the autofill. I don't know why. So if that happens, you might have to click and drag down. That's the only thing you might have to do. Yeah, happy to go over index match again. Glad it was helpful. All righty. And show the formula in, yes, in I7. There it is. I think it's also in polls and answers, but there you have it. That's a lot of dragging. I know. It's ideal, or it's ideal for that not to work or for it actually to work. So for your autofill by just double clicking to always work. But sometimes Excel Online can be a little upset. If yours is the small letter, I think you might have taken the last letter of the last name. So just make sure you're taking the first letter of the first name. And then this would also work. So even without the dollar sign, this is fine. The only reason we have the dollar sign in front is because it allows us to copy and paste the formula better. So you can have it with or without. It's just depending on if you want to reuse the formula. Okay. Oh, wow. We're already to concat. Wow. Okay. So, so if the first one return is caps and not the last one, just make sure that you are taking the first letter of the first letter of the last name. So make sure it's the first letter of the last name. Okay. So I think we have time for maybe one more exercise before the break. So this one we put left C1, or sorry, left C2 1, and that was in L2. I might have put it somewhere else. Oh no, it was in L2. Okay. So I'll come back to len if we have enough time, but if not, this is really helpful to understand how to use len in combination with right and left. Okay. So now let's do one more exercise before the break. All good except autofill. I'm not sure why autofill is having a tantrum today. I'm sorry if your autofill isn't happy, but hopefully it will be better in the future. Okay. Oh, amazing. You're already ahead of the game. So I see some questions with concatenate. Concat and concatenate are the same. It's just different versions of Excel. So those are going to be the exact same thing. Okay, so concat is another function that's really helpful. So maybe you have names in separate columns, or maybe you have initials in separate columns and you want to concatenate, or you want to put them together in one cell. Concat is the one for you. And you're already ahead of me. I see all of it in live chat, but I'll review it anyway. So it's going to take whatever you input. So let's just look at concat. So if we look at this, concat is going to concatenate list or range of text string. So this is going to be the same. So you can have just strings of text. So if you want to, you could type them explicitly, or you can refer to cells. So you're just going to choose which one to pick. You're going to choose which cells you want to squish together. So let's look at this exercise. Using concat, and I know you've all pretty much beat me to it, using concat, place the full initials. So that's going to be the first letter of the first name and the first letter of the last name for all players in the full initial column in the highest earning players sheet. So for this, I'm just going to go ahead and go over it. I'll make this full initial because I see it mostly in live chat. So we start with our equal sign as usual. Then we're going to go with concat. And since we want the full initials, we want this first one here, the first initial. Then we want the last initial. Mind you, this is the first letter of the last name. And then we are going to close parentheses, and there we have it. And if your autofill isn't working, I'm sorry. It's really not too important if you autofill it, so you don't have to just spend half the lecture dragging down. If you understand the formula, that's the most important thing. So then if your autofill is working, we can double click this box at the bottom right. Amazing. Okay. So the last name should automatically be capitalized because we're taking the first letter of the last name. So these are all capitalized, so that's why it's going to be in all caps. Oh, and then German has a good question. So what's the difference between the comma, somebody having this a comma or having this as a column? So if you have this as a column, this is referring to, if we actually just type this in, so K4 through L4, this is a range. So you're giving it a specific range. Whereas if you're just giving it cells, then that's what we're doing. So we can test this with science too. That's what I like to do. So we have concat. So instead, you're saying you want to just do this. And that's fine too. So that works as well. I'm all about experiments. We're thinking with portals today. Any other questions? We're approaching our break. See some typing, and then for the full initials, using and is fine. Just since the exercise is asking us for concat, that's why we're using concat, but using and is okay as well. And then, yep, concat and concatenate are the same. Yeah, I know. I know it's been a lot of formulas, so if you're kind of a little bit overwhelmed, it's okay. Just take a step back and just try to focus on the things that you can gather. You can always go back in the recording and then go through the exercises in your own time, especially going through with one-on-one meetings if there's something that's not clear, like if index match makes no sense, it's okay. You have a lot of time to perfect it. But just try to grasp what you can in the moment and ask whatever questions that you can, but You will be Excel experts in time. Do not worry. All right. So I don't see any questions so far. Oh, I see a question from Marie. How long did it take me to feel fully comfortable with all the formulas we've been learning? That's a great question. I think so for me, I kind of was trial by fire, so I had to teach myself Excel. So I think using them for maybe like 3 or 4 months straight, I felt really comfortable with them. So just using them repeatedly over and over and over again, like using index match every single day, maybe like 10 times a day, then I started feeling very, very comfortable with it. So it really takes a lot of practice before it's kind of drilled in your head. But that's an amazing question. And great question again. So can we give spacing in concat? Absolutely. So if you want to give spacing, then what you'll do is you'll use quotations. So we'll use a quote and then space and then quote, and then we'll put a comma. So now it's going to give us a space. So excellent question. And then platform for practice, absolutely. I'll post it during our break, but W3 Schools is amazing for practicing Excel. Great questions. I love the energy today. All right, so this is the perfect time to go for our 10-minute break, and I will see you with more Excel fun in 10 minutes. Hello, everyone. I hope you had a great break. We're gonna jump right back into it. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and I'm sharing sound too. Okay. So we went over index match. We went over a few text functions and kind of how to extract text based upon their position. Now we're going to go over how to clean and format text. So we're going to review proper, upper, and lower. And we'll also look at trim just a bit because trim can be helpful. So these are going to be functions that are either going to make everything uppercase, make everything lowercase, or it's going to try to give it like a title format where only the first letter is going to be capitalized. So let's now look at our auxiliary formulas. So here, if you want a bit more practice with left, we have time to go over these because this is helpful to know. So remember, left is going to count from the leftmost. So let's say that we want to get this. If we were to do that, we would do equals left. First, I would click on the sample text. And if I want to gather only this, only the word this, how many characters is that going to be? How many characters is that? It also says it there, but yes, exactly. It's only 4 characters. So what we're doing is starting from the left, we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and those are all the characters that we want to include. So when we do this, we have this. Right is going to be a little bit different, but the same concept. So now let's say we want to get text. We want to gather text. Based on that logic, how would we do this? How would we get the word text using right? If the only difference for right, excuse me, is we're going to start counting from the right, how would we do that? Same, but use right. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So we're going to use right. We're still going to click on this text that we're trying to extract things from. And then we want 4 characters because text has 4 characters in it. So then we'll do 4. And then for these, you don't need, in this case, since we're not autofilling or anything, you don't need to put any fixed references. You don't need any dollar signs. Generally, you're not going to need dollar signs for these text functions because as we move down, we want this cell to change. Because as we move down, we're not going to reference the same text value all the time. So we want to get a particular amount of characters from different values. So usually we won't fix these references. Amazing. So it won't print in reverse. So if we select from the right, it's only going to count starting from the right, but it's not going to print in reverse. So for mid is a little bit of a curveball, but mid is very helpful. So let's look at mid. And Vahid just beat me to it. So we're still going to select our text, except now we're going to specify which character we want to start from. So if we want to get, in the middle of this phrase, we want to get is I, is space I. First, I'm going to have you tell me. So we know we have to click this because this is our text. Now, what do we do? What is our start number going to be? Where are we going to start? See a few different answers. I see 3, I see 6, I see 5. Let me get my annotation so we can count. Okay, so let's go ahead and just count these and let me zoom so we can count them properly. So we're using the sample text and we want to get is space I. So we're going to have to start at is. So T is 1, H is 2, I 3, S 4, space is 5, and I is 6. So we want to start from I, so it's inclusive, so we're going to put 6. Does that make sense? Is that okay? Awesome. See some typing. Okay. Okay, great. So afterwards, we're going to, okay, I see a few things. So let's go over this again. So for what we want to do is we're looking at this. Oh, sorry. No, you're right. I'm looking at the wrong text. That's why. I was looking at this text, but that doesn't have the is I. So we actually are looking down here. So we want to gather is I, and we're using this text actually. So I was using the wrong text there. So we have to count a little bit more this time. So let's count this as well. So let's just figure out where we're starting from. So we want to overall get this. We want to return this here. That's what we want to return. With that, let's go ahead and count. So this comma is 1, space is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's going to be 9. Oh, I see. So we could have started up here too. Okay, yeah. I see. Instead of starting here, we can start up here. So yeah, let's just go over that again because I totally ignored this is I here for whatever reason. So if we're starting here, let's just write it. Then this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is the 9th position. 9. But if you want to start up here with this text, if we want the is I right here, that I just ignored for whatever reason, then it'll be 1, 2, 3. So it'll be 3. Is that okay? Because I don't know why I missed that is I. Is that okay with how we're counting these starting positions? And then there's a question, is there an alternative function for this? Yes, there is. So search, actually, you can input what you're looking for. So either a string, a specific letter, anything. You can input that and it will give you the position that it's at. It will give you its starting position. So we can use this in combination with search to help us not have to count this individually. And then spaces do count as characters. So that's also important to know. Spaces are going to count. Great question. Okay. So let's just go ahead and complete this mid formula. Let me get rid of my drawings. So we'll do it with both since we counted for both. So for this one, mid, we'll start with this text up here. This one was 3. And then how many characters do we want to include for this? How many characters do we want to include to be able to get is I? On fire, amazing. Y'all are doing a great job. Yes, so you didn't fall for the trap. So it's gonna be 4 because 1, 2, 3, the space is included, 4. So we need 4 characters for that. Amazing. Let's just go ahead and do the other one since we did all that work counting, we might as well. So for this one, we said we are starting at position 9, and then it's also going to be 4 because it's the same distance. So, or the same number of characters. So there you have it. And then you can do a little bit more practice here if you want to, but we're not going to do that now. Yeah, I can go back to mid. If you have a specific question for mid, I'm happy to. Or if you just want the formula, it's here. But let me just explain it again. So for mid, it's first going to ask for your text. So what is the text that you want to kind of return specific chunks out of? It's going to ask you where do you want to start. So the start number is going to be the character number. So what character number do you want to start in your text? In this case, we counted 1, 2, 3 for this I here. That would be the 3rd position. An important thing is spaces count. So you have to include spaces as characters. And then this last one is asking how many characters do you want to include? And in this instance, of course, it's going to differ depending on what you want. In this case, we picked 4. So we can get this is space I. Okay. So yes, for mid, you need these 2 numbers. You need your text, you need where you're starting, and then you need the number of characters you're including. Yeah, no problem. Okay, now these, I think, honestly, I don't use these as much, but it's still helpful to understand them. So trim is going to get rid of weird spaces. Trim is going to get rid of weird spaces. And then backtrack again, I see a good question. So what's an example of when we would use these? So sometimes your data is going to be messy, or maybe you have a file, and maybe you have a file, like for me, I have a lot of sequencing files, and they have megahit at the beginning, and then they have hyphen, and then they'll have their unique sample ID. So it looks something like this. So like megahit because, whoops, because I'm using megahit to assemble my samples. And then it'll be something like sample and then number dot FASTQ, something like this. So generally, I only want my sample name or I only want my sample number. So instead of having a list of files with this big megahit, because you have to present these a lot of the time. So you don't want your graphs to have this kind of like ugly megahit sample.fastq. You don't want file extensions in your presentations, your visualizations. So what I do is I use mid to get this sample 22 for my visualizations. So I can put these directly into bar plots or scatter plots or anything like this. And my axes are nice and neat. So that's one of the ways that you can use these types of functions. And that's actually how I use them. So they are actually very helpful. So, and yeah, exactly. So you can use this for presentations, for random data. Yeah, exactly. They have a lot of applications. So it's also great practice. Yes, data cleaning, exactly. So trim is going to help you if you have weird spaces that you can't see. And a lot of the times, especially with like survey data, this happens a lot. So trim is going to get rid of your weird spaces, but that's actually all it does. So if you look at trim, you see it's going to say removes all spaces from text string except for single spaces. So if I click this, you see this has a weird space there and here. Now it has normal spaces. And yes, you can use all of these together. So if I want to have everything uppercase, but I also want my spaces normal, well, you can't use lower with it, but if I want this, I forgot a parentheses, then you could use them together here. So these can also be used together. So, but upper and proper can't be used at the same thing because they kind of undo each other. Upper is going to make everything uppercase. So you see if we use upper, it makes everything uppercase, whereas lower was going to make everything lowercase. And then lastly, proper is only going to capitalize the first letter of words. So then proper, you see the first letter of every word is capitalized. So you can't use proper and upper together because they'll undo each other. And yeah, trim is just going to get rid of extra spaces. So anytime you have more than one space, trim is going to get rid of it. And the only input for trim is the text that you want to change. That's the only thing. Okay. So these I think are a bit more straightforward because they're directly changing how our text looks. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so we'll get back to search and find if we have time. I just want to make sure we get to our conditionals. So we went through trim, proper, upper, and lower. And now, how would we do this? So I would like you to copy and paste, please fix me. So go ahead and copy and paste this. And your goal is to change it to fix me. So how would you change this to fix me? And this is assuming that you're placing this in cell A2. A2, yes, yes, cell A2. So let's put this here. And then let's go ahead and copy and paste our please fix me. So just so we remember, don't like this font. I don't like it. Okay, so just so we remember, we want it to look like fix me. This is our goal. It knows I don't like it. Now it's spiting me. Okay, so we have to use a mix of formulas. The reason why it's not really the best to use left or right here is because what we're trying to take out is going to be kind of smack dab in the middle. So we don't want these hyphens here. We want what's in the middle of our string. So mid is going to be an easier option. You can do it with left and right, except it's just a little bit more work. But mid, I think, is the easiest path. We also know that this has to be uppercase. So we know upper is going to make everything uppercase. So this time the order is not going to matter for this. You can start with mid first, or you can start with upper. Either is okay, but just to be consistent, we'll put upper in our inside of the sandwich and then mid outside of the sandwich. So our outside is what we start with. So mid is going to ask for text. So the text that we're giving it is just going to be in uppercase. Upper is still going to return some text. So we're going to give it this. We're going to, I don't think oh yeah, I placed this in the correct spot, I think. Actually, yes, I think I placed this okay. So we're going to select our text right here. Now we're going to go to the next part of mid. So our start number has to be where this F is. So we need to start where this F is. I have my zoom things in the way. So let's go ahead and get this annotation. So we need to start where this F is. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're starting at 8. But I might actually have a space. Let me see if there's a hidden space here, because I might not see it. So I know it says 9. Oh, there's a hidden space. Okay, so there's a space I can't see. There's a space right before that fix. So let's count that now that I actually see it. Upper. We're going to click here. And now that I know about this hidden space, we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, hidden space is 8, and then we're starting at position 9. So we're going to start at this position 9 because spaces do count. Then we have to say how many characters do we want. We know we want this entire fix me, including the space. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We don't want this extra E or anything here. We want to stop at this first E. So that's going to be 6. And then since upper is in the middle here, it's already making everything uppercase. So then we just hit enter and we are okay. So well done. Alrighty, so that was this mid and upper right here. Whoops, that shows, oh, sorry, wrong way, yeah, mid and upper. Okay, so now I love conditionals. Let's get into some conditionals. So conditionals are very helpful because they allow you to sort things into groups very quickly or sort things by specific criteria. So your if statement is going to have this formatting. If a specific condition that you specify is true, then give it a value. If the value or if the condition is false, give it a different value. So let's just go through this example. We're going to create a new column called more than 100,000 and the highest earning team. So let's just do that first. So let's put a new column and call it more than 100,000. So what we're going to do next is we are going to we're going to fill this in using a conditional if this is true. So if the team is making more than 100,000. Keep in mind, we have to find if the average price is over 100,000. So we're going to use conditionals for this. If the conditional is true, so if the team does earn more than 100,000, if the team earns more than 100,000, we're going to put yes. If it's false, we're going to put no. So let's go through this and let me mega zoom so you can see. We begin with our equals and we begin with if. So first, we are giving it the condition. So remember, our condition is the average amount of prize money greater than 100,000? Oops, thank you. Yeah, I missed a 0. Thank you. There we go. So that's going to be our conditional. We see that we have our total prize money here and the total number of tournaments. To find the average amount of money per tournament, what we have to do is take this value, so this total prize money, and divide it by the total tournaments. So we don't have to calculate that outside of the formula. We can do it in our conditional. So we're going to have C divided by D. C divided by D is going to give us the average. So this is going to be the average amount of money won per team. So if this is greater than 100,000, make sure I have enough zeros this time. If this is greater than 100,000, so if this is true, we're going to say yes. And whenever you want your formula to return a word or some text, you have to put it in quotation marks. So put it in quotations. So if this condition is true, I would like us to return yes. If this is false, we're going to return no. So then we have this here. We get a yes. So this means our average is greater than 100,000. We could do a sanity check here. Let's just do this calculation quickly. So we have this divided by this, and we see that is well over 100,000. So that is correct. And what we can do afterwards is we can autofill, and then we have our column. Yeah, so you don't have to use true or false because those are things that Excel recognizes. Otherwise, you have to, if it's words, you have to put it in quotes. Oh no. So I think this will become okay with time. I think you'll get used to this more with time. I think it just looks scary because it has a lot of inputs. But what you're doing here is I'm asking Excel, hey, is the average, aka is C divided by D greater than 100,000? If this is true, give me a yes. If this is false, give me a no. And that's all it's doing. So we use C2 because this is the total prize money. And then we have D2 because this is the total number of tournaments. So remember, for your averages, you have to take the sum of whatever you're measuring divided by how many times it occurs. So for this, we have the total prize money divided by the total the total tournaments. And yes, amazing. Yes, instead instead of yes or no, you could say rich or poor if you want to. Exactly. Well done. Okay. So, yes. So I'm not quite sure about your question, but yes, this would be the total tournament. So like for this cell, to find the average here, we would do this, which is C12 divided by D12. However, you might see a tricky thing with this. You might see something that maybe doesn't work. What if you have multiple conditions? What if you want to include multiple conditions? What do you do? In that case, you can use and, or. So combined with your if statement, you can use this together. So you can say if, and immediately before you do any conditions, you can say and. And you're just going to list all the conditions that you want to be true. If I want a duck that's blue and can fly, then I would say duck. Or it would be a cell, of course. It would be C2 is equal to duck. D2 is equal to fly. Or if I want something else, if I want the game to be equal to Overwatch, and I want the genre to be first-person shooter, and I want them to be rich or making more than 100,000. This is how it could specify. The fact that I'm using and means that all of these conditionals have to be true for it to give me a value or for it to return the value that I specify for true. So if I finish this and I say, if all of these are true, I want you to tell me yes. But if even one of them is false, I want you to say no. So that's what and is going to be for. However, if we use or, then you're going to say at least one can be true. I only want at least one. So if I say or here, you still have to give it multiple conditions, but only one condition has to be true for it to return a result of yes, or for it to return a positive result. You can also use ifs. We're not going to go over ifs with an S today. You'll see this later on, but you can use ifs as well. So with ifs, you can give multiple values if they're true, but this is only going to be if all values are true, return this specific one. You can do that as well. So you're going to see that later on, or you can give it specific conditionals. So this is really good for teachers trying to assign grades. You can use this for categorizing different conditions. So if I have a lot of letter grades from different ranges, then I can say, if the grade is between 70 and 78, give it this grade. If it's between 80 and 89, give it another grade. So you can have multiple mini conditions all in one if statement, but we won't go over that today. So does it make sense when you would use and when you would use or? Keem, I love your edit. Yes versus must work. Awesome. Yeah, I'll go over just really quickly. So for ifs, if you look here, we have a bunch of kind of mini if statements. So if this condition is true, give it an A. If this condition is true, give it a B. So you have like, you're kind of squishing together multiple if statements for a lot of different conditions. That's a little bit different than what we're doing here because we're saying with and, I want all of these conditions to be true for you to give me a positive result. If we're using or, we're saying I want at least one of these conditions to be true to give me a positive result. So or only one has to be true to give a positive result. But for and, all of them have to be true to get a positive result. One more is going to be not. So not can be used if you want to say, if I want to specify I don't want something to be equal to something. For example, I don't want the genre to be first-person shooter. Then instead I can say if F2 is not. So if it's not first-person shooter. So we can use not here. And you'll see it's going to be logical. So if it's not equal to this. So it's going to kind of undo our statement. It's going to kind of undo what we're originally doing. So it's like a negative symbol. If you have a positive, it'll change it to negative. If you have a negative, it changes it to positive. So not is going to kind of undo what we're looking for. So let's just kind of formally go over them before we go into our exercise. We did our and. So remember, for and, every single one of these conditions has to be true. For or, only one of them has to be true. So at least one has to be true for it to give a positive result. And not, you're not going to really use as a conditional. You're going to use this within an if statement. So not is going to kind of do the opposite of what you're looking for or the opposite of what you give it. So that's a good reason for not. Okay. So just one example for not, just because we hammer not home. So if I don't want that first person shooter, then I would have to type out first person shooter and spell it correctly with not extra spaces. Then I can say yes, otherwise no. So you see we're using not within the if statement. It's not going to really be, no pun intended, very helpful alone. So you see it's giving me a no because first person shooter does exist there. Okay. So now I'm going to bring the exercises to you. How many teams earned more than $100,000 per tournament? And so think about which one you're using, participated in 5 tournaments or less. So amazing, you're on fire. Well done. Okay, we're gonna end the time a little early for that exercise because you all were on the ball. So let's go over this together. So this question, as a recap, how many teams earned more than $100,000 and participated in 5 tournaments or less? So we need and because we have 2 conditionals. So we're going to say they're making a lot of money in very little tournaments. So let's figure this out. So this is just one of the many ways that you can do this. But our first if statement, so we need and. Our first logical is, it's kind of handy because we already calculated this. So this is already telling us if they're making more than 500,000 per tournament. So we just have to say this is equal to yes. That's our first criteria. And we have one more. Oops, I didn't mean to close that. And we need to make sure that they're entering or they're participating in 5 tournaments or less. So this is going to be less than or equal to 5. That satisfies our 2 conditions. So for this, I like to use kind of like a binary system. So we can just put 1 and 0. So it's going to give a 1 if both these conditions are true and a 0 if they're false. We can kind of just do a quick check here. So we see that they're making more than 100,000, but they're participating in 7 tournaments, so that's no good. So if we autofill here, you see we're going to get a bunch of 0s and 1s. A handy thing here is if we do Control-Shift-Down, or if you're on a Mac, it'll be Command-Shift-Down. It's going to highlight everything, and it might be a little bit small, but at the very bottom, you see it's giving me the sum. Since I made it 1 for counting, or 1 for if this condition is true, so both if they're making 100,000 and participating in 5 tournaments or less, that's a 1, I can just add the entire column together. However, if you wanted to just do a count of the yeses, so instead of 1s and 0s, maybe you said yes or no, all you have to do is just count the number of yeses. So that's absolutely acceptable too. Okay. So let me just label this as exercise 5 because I can't think of a better title. So as you mentioned, this is going to be 21. So yep, you could also add your COUNTIF statement, just grabbing this column. So I'll do that quickly. So instead of saying 1, I can say yes, and I can say no, and then I can autofill. Then I can do a COUNTIF. So my range is here, and my criteria is yes. So how many times do I see a yes? And that is 21. Yep, you can also use a filter if you want to. So many ways to solve the problem. Well done. Yep, you could also put this in COUNTIF. So you could put this mega if statement into COUNTIF if you wanted to as well. So you could kind of combine these formulas. Okay. Now that we've done this, let's go to exercise 6. So now we want to see how many players in the data set are not from the US. So I would like you to practice with your not function. So how many players in the data set are not from the US? And I'll give you the rest of that time from before. Okay, well done. Let's go over this. So yes, you could immediately use a COUNTIF. That's absolutely true. But let's just do it with conditionals since we're reviewing conditionals today. So we want to figure out how many players in the data set are not from the US. So remember before, we're actually working in players this time. But remember before, we already have our, so there's our country, I was looking for the country. We have our country name here. So we can do this United States of America calculation. Or as I saw, you could also do your COUNTIFs. That would be absolutely fine as well. So let's go ahead and do this. So I also think we have a country code for US here. So just so you don't have to type US or like United States of America every time, you could also use this country code. So we'll go ahead and use this one. So let's figure out this conditional. I'm just going to call this exercise 6. Can't think of a nice creative title this time. So we're still going to stick with our conditionals. just for practice. And this time we're going to use not. So we're kind of taking the opposite. So instead of saying a normal conditional would just be, is this equal to, this is in the way, a normal conditional would say, hey, this is equal to US. That's what we would normally want if we want it to be true. What we're going to do is just wrap this in a not statement to say, actually, we want the opposite. Instead of having this equal to US, we want this not equal to US. So we're just undoing this. We're taking kind of the negative. So if this is true, I would like a 1. If this is false, I'm just going to take a 0. So we can do that. And you see, I don't know why it keeps picking this font, but we have a 1 here because this is, in fact, not equal to US. So we have that 1. So then if we autofill here, we can do what I mentioned before. We can just take the sum of this column. So then you'll see at the very bottom, if you just highlight your column, it gives you kind of quick statistics. So we see the sum is 886. So alternatively, you absolutely could do count ifs. You could do that. You could also, instead of using 1, you could use yes, or you can use no, and then you can just count those if you wanted to. That would absolutely work as well. Oh, hey, so now we've got one more for our conditionals. So how many players in the data set are not from the US or have earnings more than $500,000, which is insane. So keep in mind of picking which one you're using. Are you going to pick and or not or are you going to pick a combination of them? So if I'm not giving you enough time, this is just so we can get through this exercise as well. But definitely practice on your own with the recording because practice makes perfect. So let's look at exercise 7. So again, we're trying to figure out how many players are not from the US or have earnings more than $500,000. Oh my goodness. So we're going to use our handy dandy if. We're going to use or. And then I think it's easier just to get that first not conditional out of the way. We're going to use the not. Oops, I hit enter accidentally. There you go. Did the double N. So we want to make sure this is not equal to US. So we're going to go over to our country code and make sure this is not equal to US. That's our first condition. And then remember our second one is going to be, do they make more than 500,000? And I believe this is more than 500,000, not including 500,000. So keep that in mind. So is their total US prize greater than $500,000? And then if this is true, let's give it a 1. If this is false, let's give it a 0. And absolutely, we could use, instead of creating a new conditional, you could just use the one from the last exercise. Exactly. Great point. And then we have this. So we have our first answer, and we can autofill all the way down. Keep in mind, it's not just a lot of people making 500,000. There also can be people only not from the US. So keep that in mind, just not everyone's making bank here. And we see if we just sum this column at the bottom, that's going to be 906. So as you mentioned in live chat, well done. That is 906. I think last time this was 886. So I would recommend just reviewing search and find in your own time. This is a really good example with these. I'll just quickly say that search and find do similar things. Search is going to give you the position that something's at, and or the position of what you're looking for. It's also going to allow you to use wildcards. So for wildcards, this just means It can be anything. So for a wild card with question mark, you're only referring to a single kind of mysterious character. So it can be any one character. But if you use this star, it can be any number of strings. So just take a look at your search and your find functions. You don't use them as frequently, but they're still helpful to use in conjunction, especially with left, right, and mid. And then for these formulas, they're also going to be in polls and answers. So they're also always in polls and answers. So just keep that in mind too, but happy to post it here. Oh, okay. So I know that this was a lot all at once. Thank you all so much for your participation and your energy and your attention. And I will let you go take your Zoom poll. It was great seeing you all again.